Today we're trying to get the tiller operational for a job we've got coming up for it on our 2166 that we revived and upgraded and kind of brought back to life in general. This guy, you've seen some videos of the tiller on the channel. Tiller's been operating great. Went ahead and installed a proper switch here. We just had the wiring loosely routed before, and the previous toggle switch just failed. So ran the wiring, got a proper switch put in there, so now the wiring is not sitting on top of the frame. It's, routed down along this side here. And we installed a new belt. Big long belt here. This is a 191 inch 5/8 belt. It is freaking long. And then we went to test it, and it's been making some howling noises for the last, I don't know, year or so. And it would come and go and come and go. Definitely sounded like a noisy bearing. And this morning I happened to look at it and saw that, while the noise was happening, I could see this pulley here. As soon as the noise would occur, I could see the whole pulley rock to the side like that. So that pulley goes through the case. You can't even see it right now, but basically, yeah, that hole right there. It goes through the case right there, and then it connects to the belt on this side. So I removed the pulley, which was not that big of a deal. It slid right off the shaft. And this has like a friction disc to transmit the power from the pulley to the shaft. I don't think this friction disc has ever slipped once. So when we go to put it back together, I might loosen up these jam nuts here and free up that friction disc to make sure that if we do hit something with it too hard, it'll slip instead of shear something. That's definitely needs to happen. But anyway, the biggest problem was that the bearing on this side was just pooched. And yeah, we can get the bearing from Cub, but we can also just get the bearing, which is a standard 5/8 ID, inch and 3/8 OD, and 7/16 thick bearing. But when I pulled the bearing out, I found the seal, and then I found the inner race and the other seal, and the cage for the rollers. And then I got the rollers out. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I looked at the cage, and there's about 8 slots here for bearings. So 2 bearings either fell out and rolled, somewhere into the shop, or they fell into the case. And since I wasn't sure, I looked all over the shop for to make sure, I wasn't missing anything obvious. And then, as you can see, we decided to just pull the case off. This guy has been lubricated since I got it. I added a grease fitting here in the vent. And then I greased the crap out of this thing. So it had grease about halfway up in the case. So it was a real gross mess to take apart. Didn't find the bearings anywhere. I went through, pulled as much of the stuff apart as I could. This sprocket here wasn't coming off that shaft. I don't know if that's a retainer right there. This shaft isn't keyed, so, but I'm not going to get too deep into it. So what I did is I took, after I got all the grease out, I ran a magnet all the way around the outside of the case, any of the areas I couldn't get to. Did that several times to make sure I wasn't finding any bits of metal in there anywhere. You can see that the gasket held about half of its self stuck to the tiller itself, and then the other half stuck to the plate. But, it's not, since it's grease, it's not oil, it'll be fine. I'll just put it back together like that. So we're going to get some new bearings. I'm going to replace the bearing on that side. I'm going to go ahead and replace the bearing while I have it off. And replace the bearing on this side too. And when I install them, I'm going to remove the inner lip seal so they can get some proper lubrication. This guy had some of that grease got into the bearing, but it was just too late. And you can see the rust that happens in the case right here. The factory fill for this was way too low. I mean, it barely had any oil when I got it. And when I started putting grease into this thing, like black sludge started coming out of the case. So, you know, it sat for a while, got rusty there. You can see this spacer here that comes right right up against the side of the case where that bearing is. Like, you can see how rusty that is. So, yeah, and poor little guy just didn't get enough lube from the factory, and we lubed it up and we did the best we could, but we've used the crap out of it too. So, yeah, we're going to get a new bearing. We're going to put it all back together. I've looked all over the shop for the other two rollers. I can't find them anywhere. I can't find these two little ball bearings. So we'll probably give it one more shot before we put it back together. But yeah, it'll live another day.